Jesus told his disciples a parable about the necessity to pray always without becoming weary. Another translation says they ought always to pray and not lose heart. You know, it's really hard to be good. And I think it's even harder to be good and to do good over and over and over. Like to keep doing good, to keep being good. I think it's especially hard to keep doing the right thing in the face of opposition, struggle, hardship, trial, suffering, or lack of results. And it may be especially difficult for you and me to keep doing good when we don't see results. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that? When you don't see results that you want, or don't see results right away. And this can be true for you and me in lots of areas of our lives, whether I don't see the results I want for my health, maybe the results I want in my job and work, with school, in my family, marriage, with my kids, any type of relationships. I'm applying myself, I'm putting myself forward, I'm expending energy, maybe I'm taking time and putting resources into something, learning about it, and then I just never see the results I want. So what do you and I do when you don't see results? Jesus wants to address this question, at least a little bit for us, in one very important area, in our prayer. What do you and I do when we don't see results in prayer? Have you ever had that happen? You prayed for something and then you didn't see results? I think if anyone has prayed maybe more than 3 times, they have had that happen. Maybe the first 3 prayers, they're always boom, okay. But once you get to prayer number 4 on, you realize every time I pray, I don't always see the results that I immediately thought I was going to get. And what can happen when that happens is you and I can get discouraged. We can get frustrated. We can even start to say, what's the point of praying? Why would I even pray? I'm just going to stop. And maybe you've had that experience. By the way, priests are not above this one bit. And I want to be really reverent here, because sometimes the reason why you and I lose heart, grow weary, and stop praying when we don't see results is because you were praying about something vitally important. Maybe you had gotten really sick, or someone in your life got really, really sick, and you were earnestly praying for them, and they didn't get better, but got worse. Maybe you were really deeply needing some help in a certain area, and you felt like you didn't get that help. And what can happen is you and I can become really angry at God. You and I can become bitter and resentful, and we can harden our heart. We can even start to put conditions on our love for God. By the way, this happened to me. I was praying, and something happened in my life, and it didn't get better, but it got worse. And I had this deep anger and pain. And it wasn't until someone lovingly stepped into that pain for me and more or less said to me, "So when did you start having a conditional love of God?" You know, you and I, we often hear about God's unconditional love for us. He doesn't place any conditions on his love for you and me. Like, no matter what you do, no matter what happens, he will and does love you. But sometimes you and I actually don't have an unconditional love for God. We have a very conditional love for God. Like, if you don't do this for me, if you don't do this thing for that person, we're done. If this result that I really, really, really want doesn't happen, or doesn't happen kind of on my timeline, we're done. It's over. And that was really humbling for me, really healing to me too. Because it was like, wait a second. What kind of love do I want to have for God? Do I want a conditional love for God? Or do I want to have the type of love that he has for me back to him? Imagine being in a marriage where one spouse has an unconditional love for the other, and that spouse only responds with a conditional love back. What would that be like? Parents, you often have a very unconditional love for your children. It's inspiring. And if we're honest, you have to teach your kids how to have an unconditional love back. Oftentimes, we start with very conditional loves. We need to be challenged and educated and directed and encouraged. So the first thing is, I just want to acknowledge that if you have given up in prayer, you're not alone. And you can start again. So just want to hold that question up to you. Do you pray? And if you haven't prayed in a while, or if you've stopped praying because maybe you did pray and you didn't see the results you wanted, what would it be like for you to start again? What we come to discover about prayer is that it's principally about friendship and not so much about getting things. You know, you and I, when we first learn about prayer, oftentimes it's about asking God for something, and that's always okay to do. But Jesus wants your and my prayer to deepen into friendship. What kind of friendship would it be if you only asked your friend for things? What kind of friendship would it be if you barely spoke to each other, and the only time you did speak was when you asked your friend for something? Probably not the deepest friendship. And if that's where you are right now, that's okay. There's no shame there. We all have to start prayer somewhere. Jesus just wants to encourage you to go deeper. Prayer can go all the way to the bottom of your heart, and you can share with God just like you would share with your best friend. And when you do that, you will change. Your life will be healed. You'll fall in love with God. This is what I'm learning in my own life too. Oftentimes I go to pray, and then I just have to be reminded, wait a second, I just got to share what's going on. Okay, Lord, I'm really angry. I'm really sad. I'm afraid. I'm anxious. I really want this thing, and you don't seem to be wanting to give it to me. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves in relationship with God. In heaven, are you going to ask God for anything? That's a great question. In heaven, are you going to ask God for anything? If you didn't have anything to ask for, what would there be left to say to God? If you ever want to help your prayer, that is a great question. If there were no more questions, what would you still want to say to God? You will go very deep in prayer. Oftentimes, you and I, we go to prayer and we just have a lot of questions. But what if you just set those questions aside and there are no more questions? What you'd do is you'd start to become a friend with God. You'd start to fall in love. And in heaven, it's just love. What heaven is this is what heaven is. God, right now, is unconditionally, totally turned towards you. He always is. Right now, God is unconditionally, totally turned towards you in complete love. And on earth, because you and I are still growing, we put so many blocks to that love. So many blocks. So it's like, if you were to use a river analogy, it's like only a trickle of God's love actually penetrates my life. In heaven, you and I will have no blocks. Absolutely no blocks. And God's unconditional, total, personal, complete love for you will be like a torrent. And you will completely receive His love. And oftentimes on earth, you and I, when we want to love God back, it's conditional, it's partial, it's incomplete. In heaven, our response to that love will be total. I will receive His love as an overflowing torrent, and I will love God back completely with no blocks. It will be total friendship, complete union. This is our hope as Christians. Jesus wants this for you and me as a taste on earth. And it starts and it continues in prayer. So where do you find yourself today in your relationship with God with prayer? Have you stopped? There's no shame. Just start again. Are you discouraged or losing heart? Keep going. Keep going. It's worth it. What do you have to say to God? If you set aside all your questions, what would there be left to talk about? Jesus told a parable like, don't give up. Don't give up. Prayer's worth it. Prayer changes you.